Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 16th of May, and we ended up with pretty much what we were looking for from the beginning of the start of it. We had what was the beginnings of a DOC spread at the beginning of our video yesterday, and everything was pointing ugly from the mini snake that had developed. We had the cyan moving above. It was also a DOC spread, green dipping below red. So it was just ugly all around. The only saving grace was that you didn't have the extreme below the -60, but still, with all those elements turning over, we were expecting a move lower, and we had already had the magenta candle, which identifies this typical kind of setup. However, what's unusual about it is to have a DOC spread where the steel is coming from above. That's like almost always a short, sort of like the always long with the cyan under red kind of construct, and produced just that. It was a modest down day. I mean, we had talked about the potential of this yellow extreme being a calling point. Wasn't enough to get positive and really declare the low of 2692 coming, but it was just a warning sign that things had gotten a little bit heated, and some of this fill back was natural. We had the ABMs that were very easy to go off of, and it's exactly when we talked about those. And then also we have the 61% fib line there. So from 2709, we have a bunch of them in between there. Whether it was this, the DOFast, which is the yellow ABM, was at 50, and then so on and so forth from, early on. We hadn't quite got to the 50 yet. We were in the mid-30 range, right around the magenta and that. All in all, pretty decent. I mean, you saw the shakeouts falling off into, potentially negative, and that's a big difference here between the NASDAQ and this. So we're already at -4 to start the day. This was a significant dip underneath it, but you don't quite have that kind of damage yet on the NASDAQ. And the representation of the steel from above, not as horrific as it is from the S&P at this particular point, but similar situation. Below the ABM, you got all the different levels. You're still above all the green and the mid-range ones, so I think you can see the relationship of health that the NASDAQ just is a little bit stronger. Oh, gee, was this a surprise to anyone? No. We talked about this damage and that any pop was going to get hit, and then we end up right here at the peak. Same situation as we see on the daily. Nearly positive extreme, and you haven't even broken the 23%. That's horrific. That's like a death nail, and sure enough, new lows. So, and that's fine. We're still outside the range significantly by still another couple of points, but from the shorts we've had all the way up here, the mid 123s, and not a surprise, we're still expecting to get back under that 116 range. This much more dramatic and much more in line with the expectations of where we expect TLT to go down towards that 113 range. And look at that instant into the oversold. It's going to gyrate back and forth and take a little while, but definitely going to get there. Oil remaining in the elevated category, and then we turn to gold, which we've seen the manipulation in gold for quite some time, and well, it continues. Huge drawdown there. Had revisited now the dip below the red line right here. Actually, they took it out with a gap and everything, so that was a significant decline there. Again, does it really merit where things are from an inflation standpoint or a risk allocation standpoint? Maybe not, but it is what it is, and we've had some pretty soft readings coming through, and it just won't hold up. We haven't moved above the red line, and I mean the -13 with the red line of the DOC in quite a while here since the breakdown began. And even the last time we had this kind of slow systemic, we didn't make as low lows. This is going to definitely be an interesting one to see if we get any carry through higher, because that is the potential here. A turnaround at this particular point would suggest a much broader move. Here was the big D, which was just, again, this is just looking for breaks of the 50% Fibonacci, and it covers on a move back above it. And now, while I'm adjusting that so that it's going to actually begin to take some of these much higher. Still quite effective when we end up with our white category and then the gold. Suggested a little bit of a move back up to the 38%. I didn't think we were going to get to the 50. We could see that we started to get the yellow dots right here as we got to the 38. Came another short opportunity, and sure enough, revisited the lows. Did that little pop up right here. It was probably one of the more decent buy setups here. We had a pretty significant rise in the cyan, and that the bullish crossover and the shakeout had improved quite a bit from the negative 13 once we closed above the 23% on that dip of the orange. What was interesting about this run is that normally right about here, when you get the green crossing over, you expect the orange to dip. And when that didn't happen, that was like a clear warning to me that this was just going to go straight up and you weren't going to get a dip till much later. So that if you didn't break the 100%, you were going to fade. And that's exactly what happened. And that fade came through. And then we revisited it again, dip below the red line. And now we're right at about the 50% of the up move here. And still looks pretty weak. We're in continuation mode with this right now. Just had a little bullish cross right here, steel above orange, but no cross of the red, and cyan still above. So within the broader alien, you have the little snake trying to develop, but you don't have the cyan for the tongue would not be in the middle of it. So I would expect that to reverse here, and that will give a little bit more of a short move, probably to fill in the low from the pre-market. But all in all, the ranges have been pretty good. I mean, this, for as significant a number of points it was, really wasn't that dramatic, and I think things were pretty orderly throughout most of the day. I mean, it was barely not even a 1% move, so, which is nice, because even though you're seeing these dramatic swings as a percentage of the market, they don't really represent a whole lot. You have to get into the 50 and 60 points before we're really talking about something significant. However, it just points that, we've got a series of flux, and now that we're mid-month, it's going to be interesting going into the end of the month. Of course, there's always the saying, sell in May and go away. I've never really believed that, because I think there's been plenty of times where there's been significant action during the summertime, and this may actually be one of those times. So I'm looking forward to it. Hope you are as well. And seriously, with some of the exciting things happening with the indicator setups and having the functions, certainly has a lot of progression in the program. So I think that making good strides. As always, though, I will update charts and indicate where we're at with any new setups. Trade well. We'll talk to you later.